Sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on here. That is insane.
In there, I know. So thank God we brought laptops.
Yeah.
But we bring cords and things.
Brian, I don't know if you can hear me now, but your screen is frozen on my end. I may need to go out and come back in.
No, it's frozen on my end too, Haley.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
No, the plugs are at the bottom. Let's see. Plugs are at the bottom.
They can hear me.
Yeah.
Technology.
We can see you, Dr. Berger. We just can't hear you. You're on mute.
Hey, Heidi, you guys are good on this computer.
Okay.
Hello.
All right, guys, can y'all hear us now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right,
Yes.
now we're golden. Okay, so let me get the PowerPoint back up and action.
Okay.
All right, thanks, guys.
Do you want to leave this up, Scott?
Yeah, let's leave that up for now for the moment. But what I was saying is we'd be better off almost if you guys can turn on your mics if you're willing, turn on your cameras if you're willing, whatever it is, like you can mute or, but if you, I guess what I'm trying to say is we are not by any means experts at this. And a huge part of this is going, hey, here's what we identify as some of the problems, but do you guys have some of the solutions? So go ahead and click on the which one is the Teams one? Where's your little Teams window? It's probably in your internet browser there. Click on whichever browser
Why
it
don't
was.
you go with that?
We can try and find it. We're going to try and track down which one is our video here. So if you're willing,
There you go,
and this is what we look like. How come we're not in the camera here?
right here.
Oh, there I am. But let's go ahead and switch camera. Pin for me, hide me. Let's see, add spotlight. How do I? Oh, I see. I am sharing,
Yeah.
but I'm sharing off of this camera right
Okay.
here.
Oh, wow.
Do you want me to switch the spotlight to Heidi? I have it on you.
Yeah,
Do you want me
yeah.
to switch
Use
to-
your
okay.
technology savvy to switch
Yes.
the spotlight to Heidi,
I
and
have
we
it.
will. The issue is my battery is dying.
So I should explain, I'm an adjunct and Scott is at Clear Lake High School. And we made arrangements to come to the adjunct office to do this, but we found out this morning there's no cameras on the computers in the adjunct office. So we had to grab laptops and do our best to kind of pull this together. And so we are literally have 2 laptops and 2 computers. So what's great about this is it kind of explains what can happen in teaching, which I'm sure all of you guys have had the experience where you come into a classroom with one plan and then the projector's out or the computer's out or something's down. So this is a perfect example of what can happen. And to top it off, I actually have only done like 3 Teams meetings and Scott has never done any. So here we are. So so let's get going on the gist of this talk. So basically, I taught for years and years, Rice University, University of Houston downtown, and then I took 20 years off. And last semester I started teaching again here at Alvin Community College, and I was absolutely blown away by the changes. And it's sort of like a Rip Van Winkle effect where it was as if I was asleep as a teacher for 20 years and I came back and was absolutely blown away by technology and what we could do and the changes. At the same time, my PhD is in learning and memory. And so while I was so excited about the changes, I slowly became aware of some problems that needed to be addressed. And so I'm in the process kind of now of embracing the technology because it's here and our students need to be experts at the technology. But at the same time, you know, we really need them to learn the material. And some of the problems with ChatGPT and some of the other AI means that, you know, there's a struggle there. So that is kind of where I have come, you know, where I'm coming from. And my area is psychology, learning and memory. And I teach at Alvin Community College, but mostly dual enrollment classes now. And so that's kind of where we're sort of trying to address issues in those. And then Dr. Berger, we both got our PhDs at Rice in different departments. He's in mathematics and he uses a lot of AI. So I'll let Dr. Berger talk a little bit now, okay?
Yeah, so our thinking is that we wanted to discuss some of the things we perceived as the most powerful advantages and the most powerful disadvantages. And certainly, like when we came back into the classroom, everything was different than it was before. Everybody had a cell phone. Almost everybody was expected to have a laptop. The educational systems entirely run through Blackboard or Canvas or whatever. This was different. And I think for me, at least, I see it as this sea change that's really major. I started teaching 10 years ago when Wikipedia was first sort of becoming the norm. And I just remembered the change from when I was a kid going through the card catalog and looking up on index cards to find whales and then checking out a book on whales only to find it didn't talk about what I wanted. And Wikipedia changed all that. And my thinking is the things we're seeing in the past 10 years, the past 5 years, the past year are changing that again with Desmos and with Delta Math and then with ChatGPT and all the incarnations of LLM AI. So I think we wanted at some point to say, hey, tell us what you guys are seeing with the AI in the classroom. Tell us what you guys are seeing with the implementation of technology and the way you're implementing it, and tell us how it's working and how it's not working. And that's some of the things that we're kind of prepared to do as well. When we first thought about this, we saw some things in the classroom that wasn't as good as they could be. I'm sad because I don't see you guys' faces anymore. My computer died, and so now I don't get the other faces around the border.
Yeah.
But that's my sort of technological. So I think what I want to do, is there a way we can pop up your chat window in addition to this?
Here,
Yeah, so we can see, like, maybe if this is going to be large enough for you guys to see what's going on, we can see in the chat window there.
This works, guys. Good job. I like it.
Now I got to put it back up the front. Yeah. So I'm not as prepared as Dr. Ziemer is to talk about the rich-poor gap, about inequities, and about how technology had the promise of narrowing the rich-poor gap. Technology had the promise of making infinite knowledge available to anybody, but in practice, that's not the case. To clarify, some of my students were paying $20 a month for ChatGPT, and I'm wondering whether or not some may actually be paying $200 a month now, and I just don't know it yet. And so obviously, if one kid in your class is shelling out $10,000 a year on technology tools and the other kids aren't, that's going to make a difference.
You want me to jump in there?
Yeah, I'm going to pass back, but also if we want to pass to any of you guys, if you have expertise or experience or concerns about that particular bullet point, for example.
Okay, so yeah, it's odd not being able to see your guys' faces. So I've literally done, this is like my 4th Teams meeting ever. So it is hysterical after 20 years off. I mean, I've done a couple Zooms, but it's very odd not being able to see all your faces. Okay, so from my point of view, I'm a research psychologist, learning and memory. And one thing that has been known for years and years and years is that when students listen to a lecture, for example, in a classroom, and they take handwritten notes, they learn and remember better than if they just sit and listen to it. And so I was very disturbed when I started teaching, when I'm teaching dual enrollment kids and nobody's taking any notes. And I was amazed. I was like, I would go around and say, you're not taking notes. Oh, I took a picture of the board. So here's students who are in my class, and instead of taking handwritten notes in class, they're actually just listening to me, and then they're taking a picture of what I've written down. And I know that that's not going to lead to better learning. So what I started doing after being in the classroom, and again, I've been back in the classroom like 5 months, is I started doing some research. And I found a research study that shows that if students are actually handwriting their notes, that they have a deeper connectivity in the brain. And I have those articles. Just send me an email and I will give you the list of the references. But here's the thing, is that it shows even if they are typing their notes, because some students will have a laptop in front of them and they're typing their notes. And I, as a research psychologist specializing in learning and memory, I'm like, there's no way that's leading to the deeper connectivity. And indeed, there is now research. So one thing that I am going to do starting next semester is I'm actually going to require students to handwrite notes in class, so that I know they are paying attention and have deeper connectivity. I also have them do exercises where they write study guides for the chapter. And now I know they're using ChatGPT a lot of times, but I'm actually going to ask them to handwrite it. And for me, I go to the research. What does the research say? And I will, again, give you the references on that, which is, to me, the way we answer everything. So now they can't see me?
Yeah, so
Okay.
they lose us, right? You guys lose us. I guess you can see us in a little side window. So you guys can see our faces in the side window, but we can't see any of you guys because we're sharing a screen. So
Yeah,
Right.
we can
Yeah.
Is
see
that
you.
right?
yeah, so you guys can
Yes.
see us. And then you see the screen, which has this in it, which if I hide this, has this. I think that merits sort of some interactive roundtable discussion here, because the
Yes.
quest then is to get the answer to how you guys get students to take notes, or if you even think modern day taking notes is important. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's your notes in the classroom? And can we, because we're technology Luddites here and are just looking at a screen that has our PowerPoint up because the battery died on mine, how can we get you guys to participate, talking over each other if need be, because there's so few of us in the room. And also feel free to type in the chat window over here.
Manuela has her hand up if you want to hop in, Manuela.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually love that you shared that with us about the note taking. I was a nurse before in long-term care, and one of the researchers there as well said a person with Alzheimer's will remember if they write things down, because they might not remember what they wrote down, but they're like, okay, when will my daughter come and visit? And if they write it down on a piece of paper, they remember to pick up the paper and read it and like, oh yeah, she's coming this afternoon. So that's really, really interesting. So I really like that. So taking notes is definitely something that they should do. I'm a math teacher, so what I make my students do is make them do the problems in the classroom, but probably that's what you do as well. So it's a little bit different in math.
We were talking about the limited face hours, like Heidi was envying, sorry, I'm calling myself Scott or whatever informally here, but envying the number of hours I get as a high school teacher. So if I get like an hour a day, 45 minutes a day, every single day, then surely I can see the kids writing math problems. Surely I can see the kids writing paragraphs, writing essays, taking notes, whatever. But if you're on the once a week, twice a week schedule, there's a lot more getting offloaded to work they're doing at home. And what does note taking from a book mean at home? And do we have to spend time in class like modeling that?
Jennifer's hand is up,
Oh, perfect.
but and so I think she could go next. But I just wanted to hop on and say, you just said something that you said maybe we need to model that in the classroom. I can 100% tell you, as an English 1 composition teacher, a lot of times I'm students' first take at college. And I can 100% tell you, a lot of the time they're just showing up and they don't know what to do. So I tell them every day when you come to class, these are the materials that you need. This is what we'll be doing. And at the beginning of the semester, I give notes for them to fill in. They don't know how to take notes. And I will often say, if you walk by my classroom, you'll hear me say, pick up your pencil and write this down. This is the word you write down. And on all my slides in the upper right-hand corner, if it doesn't have anything, that they know that they're listening or they're speaking. But I have a camera, a picture of a camera, or I have a picture of a pencil. And if you see that pencil, you know this is what you're writing down. If you have a camera, this is something that you can take a picture of because it's like a visual that shows an example. But if it's a pencil, you need to write it down. And I never even get to a point where I allow that symbolism to stand on its own. I always say, pick up your pencil, you are writing this down. And I spend, and my semester is only 8 weeks, sadly, but I do spend the entire 8 weeks modeling, scaffolding, and reinforcing that, hoping somewhere they grasp something for that. Because I know Shayna said in the chat that her students just show up to class with nothing and they just look at her. And so I tell them on the first day, this is what you need when you walk in here to be ready for success. And this is how we're going to do this. And so many of them are so grateful that I'm setting them up for that, because otherwise they're just, they just don't know. And you know, that comes from a variety of different reasons, but they just don't know. But I'm sorry that I jumped in. Go ahead, Jennifer.
No, it's good stuff. Jump in every time. One of the things I will say right along what y'all are talking about, many of the students, because we are in such a technological digital age, they physically don't know how to take notes.
Right.
Period. They don't know how. And so one of the things that we have done in our math department is created note outlines. I think Brian actually threw this in the chat as well. We have what we call guided notes. These are notes that I am going to guide you through to fill out. And I tell them, if I write it, you're writing it. And we provide these guided notes. Now, that creates a potential barrier. Many of them do not print them. So in the math department, as we have moved to 8 weeks as well, we got to where we printed and bound into a set book for what, and they knew from day one, you bring this book to class every day. And in that book, we're going to fill it out together. I'm going to teach you how to take notes. What I have on the board is exactly what you have on the paper. Because many of them also don't understand that their learning style can make or break them in that, right? If they're a visual learner, sure, they're fine with you just writing. But if they're auditory, if they're kinesthetic, they really need that transfer of information, especially into that handwritten, really for all of us. So I think what y'all are talking about all very much ties into, they don't know how to do it in this technological world. We've got to teach them and give them the tools to be successful in how to do it. Not just take notes, but here's how we're going to take notes. I'm even going to provide you the material you need to take effective notes. So good discussions, everybody.
It is amazing to me after 20 years away to come back and see these changes, that they don't know how to print. They don't know how to take notes. Their level of anxiety when the phone is taken away is amazing. And the distraction, and this is going to sound really gross. I'm sitting there teaching the other day, and as I look out on my 15 students, dual enrollment students, 3 of the students are very energetically picking their noses in the middle of class. And I'm like, okay, this is different. And I was just, so I'm just gathering data as someone who's, as I say, spent my whole life learning, and memory is my passion. Taught in the Rice University Graduate School of Education, teachers how to teach K through 12, and then going into high schools with dual enrollment or the first classes in ACC and being like, whoa. And the first feeling being so excited, and I am so excited about what we can do now with the technology, but then realizing we have to step back and see, because the students' brains haven't changed in the 20 years. There's evolution is not happening. So what was great for learning 20 years ago, we somehow have to embrace all this technology, really use the great parts of it, but we need to step back and say, okay, we threw some things away that we need to do, that we needed to keep. I also substitute teach 4 hours a week, half a shift a week. That is unbelievably helpful, because you can see where the students are coming from. And I sub in all different areas. And just for kicks, every once in a while, when I started subbing in high school, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, you've got to be kidding me. And so then I started subbing all the way down to pre-K. And I see what is happening in the schools, and how technology, they give those kids, if they're too rowdy and there's, the teachers are overwhelmed, they give them a laptop to play with. And so, and it's even a reward, like just let them play on their laptops, or go get your, and so, we're setting that up as 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. And so, we just need to step back a little bit. And it sounds like everybody here is, and we just really want ideas from all of this, you all.
I had we were wondering whether or not you banned the cell phone. Like, I'm going to switch to one of our things here, where we were talking about some of our solutions. Sorry. Whether or not you ban cell phones completely in your classroom, or whether or not you had another strategy that was more effective.
I'll hop in and say that I, depending on where I am, because I always respect the rules of where I am. And some campuses have said, out of sight, out of mind, and so I do sometimes ban it. But what I have found is beneficial for me is I embrace it and I use it. And I create puzzles and Google Forms and note documents and things and make QR codes for them. And so I link them up. So if my students are doing group work or something, there's always a QR code for them to scan and questions for them to answer or fill out. And they can actually do that in class using their phones. I started off doing that in group work because I would randomly have students here and there who didn't have cell phones. I haven't had that happen since probably 2016 or 17 that not everybody in the room has had a cell phone. And so, but I like the group aspect of it. But I have found that when I can, embrace it and use it, it has worked out far better. But I also tell the students when I'm setting up my expectations for the class, if you need to text, if you need to talk, you need to leave. Right, because that's just unprofessional, and we're simulating a professional environment here, because that's why we're all here, right? And so I do go through that, but there are so many. You can do so much now with just Googling free generators to generate, like, turning something into a short code that students can access quickly or take a picture of and upload, and QR codes and things like that.
Yeah, without the phone, they can't do poll everywhere, QR coding, that sort of thing. Yeah. So it's, yes, go ahead.
Some high schools, you don't have cell phone service. Manville High School, we do not have cell phone service in the high school
Right.
itself. Alvin, we do.
And that's a blessing sometimes. A lot of
Yes.
times that's not a blessing, because you're like, well, typically I embrace this, but I can't because we don't have any service.
Right, got it, perfect.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on some of the things too. For me, guys, so as a chemistry instructor, for me, the cell phone I use like a tool. I tell folks it's like a tool. It's like when you're in the class, when we're working example problems, we're doing calculations, I tell my guys, hey guys, y'all can use it as a tool. I have students that record videos. Like, I let students record me. That's perfectly fine. I have students that use it and take pictures of my work or take pictures of the problems. I have students who even, they'll even follow along on Blackboard, especially with Blackboard Ultra now. It's much more mobile friendly. So students can get on there and they can look at a PowerPoint if I'm doing a review for the exam, or look at a file, or look at a website, for instance, because I have my formula page on a website that lets students access their periodic table, polyatomic ions, solubility rules, all those fun things in chemistry that you need to do the subject matter with. And so for me, it's about using it as a tool. But then I also explained to students that, and Shayna actually said this. So Shayna, are you in here? Because we had this conversation about a month ago. If you can't do the basic work, you can't, then the technology is irrelevant. So if you're not showing your work and you're not showing that evidence, and math folks, I know you guys have got my back on this one. I can see Manuela nodding. I see Deanna nodding, and Brazel, I assume you're nodding with your camera off. But if you're not showing how you get there, if you're not showing that how to do the problem, then how are you gonna be able to explain it? It kind of goes back to, I'm gonna go with my true lies example. I remember when Charlton Heston goes, "Where is your data? Where is your proof?" And they go, "Well, we don't have it yet." Well, you better get some. So that's how you're gonna have to explain it. How do you get to that process? So that's my 2 cents there, and I'll let other folks chime in.
I had a slight problem, like with photo math, in that when I'm teaching AP pre-calculus and I have the kid photograph with photo math, and it says, oh, sine plus cosine over sine minus cosine equals, tan squared or something. And it says, hey, it looks like you're trying to do a trig verification proof identity. Is that correct? And the student clicks yes. And it's like, okay, here's the 2-column proof. Write this on the left and write this on the right. Done. The photo math was the first time where the student could literally photograph the problem and transcribe the answer without any of the mathematical content entering their brain in any way whatsoever. And so there's this concern I have with the technology where when you say, what does it mean to know how to do it? The student has a demonstrated ability to let the AI do it for them in a way that generates the right answer, but the student doesn't understand the right answer and never does. And when the test rolls around and it's a paper test, that shows up. And so definitely jump in there.
Yeah, Deanne? Do we have
Yeah,
to
I think
click on-
that's one of the hardest things. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the hardest things is we're getting students that are now going, why do we have to show our work? We've got AI, we've got photo math, we've got all of these things that'll do it for us. And some of them, like you said, are really good. I've played on there and it's like, oh, well, that worked, worked well. So, and they also have their laptops out a lot of times in class for me because they are taking notes a lot of times on their laptops and things. I'm not behind them most of the time, so I have no idea if they're really taking notes or whether they're doing other things. So I've kind of, the technology, unless it's become distracting for others, I just tell them you need to be taking notes and remind them periodically, especially when I start seeing phones come out. But I would be chasing down technology issues all class period long if I was actively going behind them instead of being at the board, uh, showing them how to do things. So part of it ends up being on them. Are they willing to learn? Do they want to learn? And it sounds bad to say that.
What level do you teach?
I'm college, but a lot of times I'm in the high schools. So, when I do walk around behind them, it's funny. I can see them switching screens constantly.
Right.
They're doing the homework that's due in the next class and everything else. Sometimes it's YouTube because they don't care about the homework in the next class either. And then you've got others that are actively taking notes on their computer.
Right.
How do you get them enthusiastic or desiring to learn? Like, is that something that can be taught at the early college level when they haven't had that, or there's a deficit of that?
I think part of it depends on the group. I've had groups that really they get competitive or they want to help each other, and that works really well. When there's a lot of independence in the group and they don't talk to each other that much, they don't know each other, it's easier to do your own thing and do stuff outside of the class.
Got it. There was somebody else that raised the hand. Yeah.
Yeah, hand raise, definitely jump in.
Jump in, whoever. Yeah.
Manuel, you want to take first? You want me to?
You have number one, so I'll be right after you.
Well, there you go. A couple of things I will say. So while my heart is always with ACC, I am actually now up north of or around the Lubbock area. And one of the things that I have learned about our school here is we have a much bigger emphasis on that handwritten work, to the point we don't have anything online. There's no online homework. There's no online quizzes. There's no online tests. Everything is pen to paper, paper to pencil. And I have a love-hate relationship with it, right? Like there's a lot more grading on me. But what I am finding is real benefit to every single week. My math students are taking a quiz in front of me on paper.
Yeah.
And that way, those that are using the photo math on their homework get that immediate, every single week, frankly, slap in the face, kick in the gut, whatever words you want to use that go, oh, I really just bombed that quiz. I didn't actually know what I was doing. And I'm getting that. Yes, I'm giving up some face-to-face teaching time with them to be able to give that quiz. But what I feel like we're gaining by not always having the online quizzes, I think has turned into a real benefit when it came to test time, because they're getting that every single week, a little bit of a ouch. Yes, like we did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's one of those downfalls to technology, right?
Yeah.
We went so technology heavy that we lost the true benefit of pen to paper assessment and getting them that feedback.
Yeah.
So.
It's amazing to have come to the conclusion in the last couple of weeks that I needed to start doing that.
Right back.
It's shocking. I'm like, we are going back to, I'm literally going to have them all bring in a tablet and they're going to take notes in class by hand. And I feel like you have to get buy-in. That's why I looked up all the research. So psychology is so research-based. I'm going to bring the articles in. I'm going to say, listen, I care about you guys. And so the two articles I'm going to bring in is the anxiety level when the phone is taken away, and just say, folks, this phone stuff, I care about you. I want you to learn. Yeah. So in this environment, we're going to have this. This is what we're going to do. And this is why this article on brain connectivity that shows your brain is more connected, and try it because it's psychology and these are psychology articles. It's very appropriate for us to go over it in class and just say, I care about you. So these are going to be the class policies, and to have, come to that conclusion.
Well, and frankly, when you have those printed guided notes that you're handing them, especially in those booklets, I don't see students pulling out their laptops as much. because they don't have the laptop to take notes on. They have the book I gave them.
Got
And
it.
so just in what I'm handing them, I'm already embedding that emphasis of we're doing pen to paper because this is what I gave you. You don't have an electronic copy of it. And especially for my hybrid or online classes, you're turning that in for a grade.
That's
And
awesome.
I will look to see that it is handwritten, not just copy and paste it in. And so again, you're putting that great emphasis as well on the importance of that pen to paper. And it cuts down on some of the technology issues within the classroom too.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Manuela, all yours. I'm gonna be quiet now.
Yeah, so thank you, Jennifer. I agree. This is I always did quizzes in the classroom, and that's really what I like because I give them feedback. But I think Heidi, I think you asked the question. So what do we do? And one of the things that I do is I do a warm up. Especially for the beginner algebra, but usually I do a warm up every time. But for the beginner algebra students, and they're in college, I do really basic math. So, but it's quick and it's for memorization. So, because sometimes it's hard to teach when they can't follow me, right? When they're still counting with their fingers, and I'm like, okay, forget the fingers. We're gonna really do this over and over, so that they can follow what I'm doing and don't get lost in when I make the concept a little bit harder. So I do these speed drills, and it's a little sheet of paper laminated, and they get the same thing over and over with different numbers every time. And it's fractions, it's integers, it's and so that will it's like a true warm up for the brain. And then before I start the class and the lesson. So that's one of the things I do. That's just in the beginning. And of course, we do the note taking and the quizzes and yeah, all that.
Yeah, I saw a calculus teacher doing that to good effect with essentially verbal quizzes. Like what they were doing was the unit circle stuff, but they would tell the kids, number your paper 1 through 10, what number 1, what's the sign of pi over 6? And having it transfer from like a teacher verbal to a student written on paper really cut down on the class to class cheating where the kids tell each other the answers in the next period, things like that, where the kids all at lunch be like, okay, I'll tell you all the answers on the math test if you tell me all the answers on the US history test, and they quid pro quo it. And it is hard with the modern technology to prevent a Discord channel from discussing the test midway through the day.
Yeah, that's an awesome idea. Thank you.
I'd asked, as a follow-up about the group work, because I do so much group work with my students, and how that sort of dovetails with the modern technology, and whether you guys had insight into effective grouping as far as like improving, I think, their buy-in and their engagement in the value of the learning process and how exciting it is to actually teach somebody else how to do it. Like they're telling their friend, rather than looking it up on their phone, or even if they are looking it up on their phone, they have to explain what photomath is telling them to their partner.
I can jump in and comment on that. Again, I teach English, so it's a little bit different, but I will assign, I have some, what I like to call sentence felonies, what are grammar rules. And I have a group of students that I have randomly matched together through a game. And then each student has a rule that they are going to become an expert in. So like you are a rule in comma splices, you are a rule in fragments, you're going to be an expert in run-on sentences, right? And so they go and I have a handout that they fill out. They've become an expert on this. And so then when they're peer editing, you are only looking for these crimes in this paper, right? And you're the expert. And if somebody says, is this correct? I'm not sure where this comma goes. Then they're going to go over here to this comma expert and ask them before they can then ask me if there's, like any dispute or they're not sure. And the students like that because then they're the expert. And then I will ask them. Right, then I will say, I will put up examples in class. I always give students an example of something that we're working on, but then I always give them one that's called busted. And we have to label it as busted so that they don't use it as an example. But I let them go through and edit a class example together. And then I will call on our experts in the room. And it just makes them feel valued, I guess is the terminology I'm looking for. And then they know beyond a shadow of a doubt, they know that they're going to be called on. So they know, hey, I got to be prepared for this. and I don't switch roles. So once that's your role, you've got it. And so we just kind of continue on with that. And that's been one way that I can get buy-in, participation. And it's funny because even when we're not doing those peer editing assessments in class, something will come up and a student will know hey, I need to ask Clifford a question over here because he's our comma splice expert and I don't think this is right. And I find that when that happens, of course, I'm like, oh, this is what dreams are made of. This is, that's the kind of interactions you want to see. Doesn't always happen. But when it does, I'm like, see, all of this is worth it.
One thing that I think about a lot, and I don't know what your guys' experiences on this, but having 2 semesters behind my belt or under my belt, I was at one high school last semester that frankly half of the kids could have been at Rice University and been just fine there. And only a couple of students belonged in the dual enrollment class and passed it, but were not quite where they needed to be. And this semester it's a bit different. So there's this huge range and this huge variability, and you want to make sure if a student, I wrote a letter rec for a student that was applying to Rice, that you are doing justice to that student who needs to be prepared to go to Rice University in a few months. But then you have another student who, if you had the class more difficult, they wouldn't make it through. So I find the range and the variability very difficult. I also really struggle with the fact that these are college courses and substitute teaching in high school, and you see the high school behaviors. And when you do the general class, the AP class, the APA classes, and the dual enrollment classes, and you see the different level of mainly behaviors, I found that at some high schools, I'm having to give them a talk about this is high school behavior and this is college behavior. And when you, and I like to say, when you walk through the door from your high school into this ACC classroom, it must be really difficult because you have to, within seconds, transform yourself from a high school student, intellectually, behavior-wise, what we expect, to a college student. You have to pretend that this classroom is actually on ACC campus. And so I try really hard to bring all of their behaviors and their activities up to what you would see at University of Houston, which I've taught at, at Rice, where I've taught at. And frankly, mostly they're expected to just open their book and learn. And so it's, a combination. I struggle a lot with that. What do you guys do? The fact that they aren't at a college and some of them really need more of the high school type of support, but we want to do justice to all the students. What do you guys do about that? There we go.
Yeah.
Deanna?
I try and get into their activities. I try and talk to them because they need that. They need the support. They are high school students. So I'll go to the plays and everything and some of the sporting events, but then I also tell them my expectations for class. I when we're getting started in the beginning and I'm taking roll, they can kind of talk about it and I'll ask questions and then we start class. And then if we have time at the end, then they can talk about, what game they're playing or homecoming coming up. And I'll even ask that because I'll have to adjust when I'm teaching because heaven forbid, I plan something that's going to take a lot of time and they need to really understand on the Friday before homecoming. It's not, right. Nothing's going to sink in. So I ask them about their schedule. I adjust accordingly. But then I also tell them my expectations. This is a college class, so we need to stop. We need to focus on the math.
Okay, good.
One of the things that was incredibly striking, in particular, I think even at the high school level, was technology it created the promise in the administrator's eyes that it would solve the differentiated learning problem. And so more than ever before, the kids have an enormous variation, like 40 kids in the classroom. Some of them can't add, and others of them, could take any calculus class and breeze through it. And what they're saying is, oh, we have technology now. You just sit them behind this adaptive learning device and they can go at their own pace. I guess Alexa does that for Cengage or something like that. And there's others, like we use a lot of Delta Math, which I guess honestly isn't adaptive learning, and Khan Academy maybe isn't adaptive learning. And so I guess even with ChatGPT, even with the latest and greatest, I have not seen a piece of technology that meets the promise or expectation that's been put on it, that it would meet the kid exactly where they currently are and egg them on and push them forward independent of the teacher, despite the fact that they're way far advanced or way behind everyone else.
Is that a hand up there?
That's mine.
Oh, okay, that's yours.
And I think if the teacher gets involved in the high school activities, the high schoolers have more buy-in in the college activities.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's that sense of why the student ought to be caring about your class, like why should they learn? I had a quote that I put in our PowerPoints that was something to the effect of, once ChatGPT can actually do it for the kid perfectly, the only thing you've got left is the kid has to want to learn. Like at the end of the day, there will not be a question that I can fairly ask a high school student that these AIs won't be able to solve perfectly. Before this, it was happening like 4 or 5 years ago. What we were discovering is they were farming out to Bangladesh or wherever, like some person who was a professor in some developing country would get like 17 cents a problem to answer these problems. And they would have a PhD in mathematics or whatever. So they could certainly answer high school problems like nobody's business. And now even that market's gone, as the AI does that perfectly as well. Photo math is nearly perfect. And the teachers at high school that I interact with are all like, oh, put a yellow polka dot background on the problem and write using, Greek letters in the alphabet instead of using X and Y and Z. And to me, that totally misses the point, in the sense that that's chasing the technology and it's never going to keep up. Already photo math can deal with a grayed out background or a black on white or white on black or pink polka dots. And so the real solution is to have students who actually want to use photo math for good rather than evil. And so it's like, okay, now we're talking about going to their football games. Now we're talking about why we're learning and what value it has, and devaluing the GPA or the grade points or the grade grubbing in favor of something else, where the kid realizes that the fun part is that they're learning.
How do you guys motivate students to really care about the material and the learning? The high schoolers, actually all of them, there's, I find a larger than I'm happy with percentage that are focused on get their information, get the grade. They're very practical, they're very pragmatic, as opposed to being in love with the learning and the intellectual exercise of learning. Do you guys have any special tricks for how to do that?
I think that is a really good question. And that is actually something that bothers me, because Scott has mentioned it and Deanna has mentioned it. The student must want to learn. And what my internal fight is, well, that is great. And I 100% agree. But the school wants a 70% pass rate. Now I have to pass students that are not interested in learning. And what they want is the recipe. Give me the recipe so that I can pass. And they said, okay, I'll think about it, but you have to tell me step by step what I have to do. And there is no more interest in learning. But that is just one problem. The other problem, especially on the college level and even on the high school, I noticed when I went to high school, I worked maybe part-time here and there something, but now the students almost work full-time after school. There is no time. They need that condensed recipe format so they can quickly do homework before they go to work. There is no more interest in learning. There is, for me, there is an interest in survival. And how do I pay? There's students in high school that have to pay their own books, most of them. And my parents paid my books. It's just a different world. And so, yes, the questions you guys asked right now, what do we do to motivate them to learning? I think that's really the question we need to ask ourselves. And how can we get them interested again in discovery, in making mistakes and learning from mistakes, and not be afraid to do that? And instead, they are very afraid of making mistakes. They don't want to talk out. They won't want to put their attention on them. So I think that is really a big challenge that we have right now. And I don't have an answer. So I hope somebody else has an idea of how can we get them motivated.
Yeah, it looks like Brian said sometimes buy-in equals make it a grade. And that for sure, everybody says that. Brian, did you want to say more about that?
Sure, yeah. So what I've had to do with my lecture videos to get students to watch them in the online class, I've incorporated them into my online homework. So what that means is that I've put a little I agree statement, kind of like, the whole I've read the warranty on my iPad and understand that Apple owns my life kind of thing. Well, the idea is by doing that, the students are watching the videos and then they're answering follow-up questions. So to kind of go back to the old school way of how we may have learned, we read the book, read the chapter, and then had like 3 or 4 follow-up questions at the end of the section. And so that's kind of where I've kind of taken my homework to, is that direction. And the students who are doing it are doing great. Now, I have the benefit of also having a side hustle where I don't have that ability to put my lectures in an online homework platform. And the students who are not watching the lecture videos, I can tell because they're not learning the material. They're not doing well on the homework assignments, or they're not following directions. They're typing their work. They're typing things that they shouldn't be typing. Yeah, I'm old school. I like the hand-rendered stuff too. I have students upload their work. I tell them, turn your cell phone into Adobe scan your work in as a PDF, and it's very nice to grade. So getting into the whole technology thing, I mean, there's a lot of ways where the new school can still help the old school, but you got to have that emphasis. And it's hard. Believe me, there are so many factors that go in, because everybody's right. I mean, I worked part-time in college. I was an RA. I lived on campus. I had a nice job that let me do homework while I was doing work. But our students today, they're running to other jobs. They're taking these online classes because they need that convenience and flexibility. And yeah, it's a challenge. And so I have to remind students, I'm like, hey guys, remember, you only have 168 hours in a week. So you got to sleep sometime.
Right. Very interesting.
Yeah, Deanna? Yeah.
And I think Shayna talked about this in the chat as well. Whatever you can do to relate it to their lives right then, because they're kind of living in the moment, especially in the dual credit. They're teenagers. Everything revolves around them. So if you can find something that interests them, whether it's the sports, give an example that deals with the sports, or the play that's coming up, or the musical, that helps. But you've also got the fact that you've got, and this was mentioned before also, you've got a wide variety of kids in your class. Some of them can handle working after school. A lot of us did it in high school, and we took pretty hard classes. We paid for our college and everything else. Whereas you've also got kids that, in my day and age, you went to the university. You had to be accepted to the university. We've got kids that would not be accepted into the university in the same class. And they're struggling with the schoolwork. They can't handle the schoolwork and the after school job. So, they're sitting there in your class trying to decide what's going to go. And that's not a good position. They're not focused on what you're talking about, even if you're meeting something that's interesting to them. They've got other concerns on their mind.
It's actually really easy to make my psychology classes focus on the really interesting examples that are interesting to the kids. but we're kidding ourselves if we think that that's what a quote unquote real college class is. That's where I'm at, because I don't have any problem capturing their attention. But I'm finding I'm going in with examples, pulling all the examples from the textbook that I know they're going to find so interesting in class. But then there's all this other really difficult stuff they need my help with. But you know what? If they're not paying attention, it's better that I at least get them paying attention in class with these really exciting examples. And that's a difference. For me, it's all about 20 years ago and then coming in here, and the attention span is very different. That's the biggest thing. And I'm trying to figure out why. Why is the attention span so different? Why is the kind of love of learning a lower percentage? I'm literally just the Rip Van Winkle, still in shock at all the differences. And that is a huge difference. It's not that we didn't have kids that had to have all the sexy, fun, interesting examples before. It's just there's a huge percentage of them. Yeah, the attention span problem is absolutely huge. It's huge. And I'm starting to just
they never have to wait.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're so used, their lives revolve around the TikTok and the YouTube and the Facebook Reels that are 10-second sound bites, and they pretend that this is knowledge or this is growth or this is education. The edutainment industry makes me so sad, because the educators can't make fun video games and the video games can't make their games educational. And I wish we had a better crossing of the divide.
Yes,
You know,
addictive. Yes.
even younger than that, I think about my almost 8-year-old and my almost 6-year-old. So they complain that they're bored between school and the house, and I'm like, sweetheart, it's 15 minutes, get used to it. And I think there is such a societal push of that instant response, even when we don't intend to, right? I'm not going to let my kids sit there and live on devices all the time. They're going to get outside, they're going to work. But we physically have so much more at our fingertips that it's, even at birth, so ingrained that we don't have to wait for things. We don't have to work for it as much.
Right.
It feels like refined sugar to me, like processed foods.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just one of the things that I'm shocked about, and I'm trying to do a bunch of research and read and figure out how to change things, because they need the information, and they need to. I'm a little bit worried about what I see in my dual enrollment classes, and so now I'm just gathering data, and so that's why we really appreciate all your guys' input. And I do have a bunch of resources, references. I'm happy if you send me an email to send you a list of the references. And I fully embrace AI. I fully embrace all the technology, but I'm finding I'm just going to step back as a learning and memory psychologist. I will be stepping back to some of the old ways, teach them how to use the technology, but there's a lot of problems. And so stepping back into some of the old school, like handwriting, and putting phones away, and sure, make things interesting, but it's going to have to be intellectually interesting. And so that's been my takeaway over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. I think we just are right on time at 10:40. Getting any other comments anybody wanted to make? Thank you so much for joining us, and send me